Ryan's World the Movie Titan Universe Adventure is a 2024 live-action animation hybrid movie that is based on a YouTube series named Ryan's World that, getting this right out of my system, is absolutely awful. This review comes to me as a request from my new editor, MatthewThePrep, who previously worked on my Raya and the Last Dragon review. One day he asked me if I do watch-alongs with other people, which I said that I occasionally do. Given that I did that when I did my review on the Rodfellows movie, and I did that with the previous review in production order, the Gabby's Dollhouse movie. Well, Matthew the Prep requested me to do a review on the Ryan's World movie, and in just 1 week alone from the time that I watched and am scripting this review in particular, I've come across 2 movies in a row that are currently in my bottom 10 for this series. And the scariest part of all is that I'm only 46 episodes into this series so far. I'm not looking forward to what the future has in store. So, what is the premise of this movie? This film revolves around a kid named Ryan. He's so much of a star on YouTube that he gets too occupied with all of that to be able to play with his sisters. So what they do in the movie is that they decide to mess with his things in order to get him to snap and finally play with them for once. Before we go into this animated world, where do we just fumble around before defeating one of the worst twist villains ever? Blah blah blah, message about appreciating family that is poorly executed, blah blah blah, filler. And to start off this review, this film is just like the Rodfellows movie, where that film was shrouded in so much controversy regarding what the people behind that movie, Dan P. Lyons, Darren A. Nichols, and Alexander V.A. Mortensen did, that's now what the movie is most well known for, even though the film itself was just awful. Ryan's World the movie has this exact same problem with itself, only difference being that nothing predatory was going on, but instead, this is in regards to Ryan being exploited by his parents. Because according to Matthew the Prep, the kid was 12 years old, now 13 as of this script being drafted, and in middle school at the time that the film was made, and the channel was formed in 2015 when he was 4 years old, which by the time of the film having been released, the channel was 9 years old. People online have been clamoring for Ryan's parents to stop exploiting him, from other online animation critics like Saberspark, before all the nasty stuff regarding him came forward, which have been debunked, to channels like Internet Anarchist, and it's quite alarming when things like that occur. Have we not learned anything from the Quiet on Set documentary? Let kids live without being exploited by their parents for their financial gain. But even without the knowledge of what's been happening with Ryan and what he's been having to go through behind the scenes, this movie would still be awful, because to begin with my criticisms, let's start off with the production values. Keep this in the back of your heads for this entire video. This film was somehow able to be given a theatrical release, and from the sound of this, I am just floored. Like, there are movies out there that do match the same exact quality as a straight-to-DVD movie that somehow managed to get into theaters, such as Norm of the North or Arctic Dogs, but this movie is literally the bottom of the barrel in this regard, because every aspect of this movie just screams cheap, right down to the poster. This looks like something that you'd make in Photoshop with built-in assets. It's so amateurish and is something that you'd expect from someone in a graphic design class, not from something that is able to be given a full release, but beauty is only skin deep. It can't be that bad for the rest of the movie, right? Wrong! The rest of the movie is not much better, because the cinematography makes the film look like one of those YouTube videos that acted as full-blown home movies. I mean, this film is based off of a YouTube channel after all, so being authentic is what you get. Despite the fact that, again, this thing was able to be given a theatrical release. There had to be some form of quality control. Surely they must have had to work with a budget that gave them access to more high-quality equipment, because a problem with the cinematography in this movie is that it's too bright. Not to mention either, this legit looks like it belongs in a YouTube video. But even that's an insult to YouTube videos, because I've seen YouTube videos that had better effects than whatever this movie tries to pull off. Just look at this video made by StormXF3.
Why did you smash my cake?
and then compare it to one of the visual effects from this movie, and you'll see the big problem with this movie's effects. And while the animated portions are the best aspect of this movie, making me think that they should have had this movie be fully animated instead, but just because the animated portions are the best parts of the movie, that doesn't mean that they're great, because the animation in this movie is nothing special. The animation studio behind this film's animated segments is Shinny Animation, and their catalog is massive, having worked on most notably the long-running Doraemon and Crayon Shin-chan animes. But yet, with this movie, it feels like they were not putting their all into this, as did none of the other supporting studios that assisted Shinny for this film, feeling like they were obligated to do it despite not wanting to. Because for starters, the character designs in a vacuum do look nice, as because this movie was done by Shinny, who have experiences when it comes to the previously mentioned animes, they are competently designed. And the backgrounds give off this comic book-like feel, which emphasizes how this world that Ryan gets teleported to in the movie is literally a comic book, but everything else in this movie is incredibly undercooked. You know how a lot of TV shows and movies, whenever they do a satire of anime, often portray it as being overly cheapified, making over-the-top facial expressions, having these symbols pop up over and over again, etc., but only they did it specifically in a joking manner, since not all anime is like this? That's what this movie does, but they do it unironically, because to start things off, the character designs in this movie are incredibly lazy. Not because they look low effort, but rather, the movie decides to copy and paste the exact same body type and apply it to one of the others, while also completely disregarding the fact that some of those characters are a lot older than the other. Ryan's two sisters, for instance, are around the exact same height as Ryan, despite the fact that they're younger than him, and the movie's twist villain Clark was shown earlier in the movie to be a lot older than Ryan and his two sisters, and with the anthropomorphic cat and panda characters, the movie implies that both of them are supposed to be adults, but the movie shows that they are also around the same size as Ryan and his two sisters. And I need to emphasize this again, this film's animated segments are coming from the exact same studio that did the animation in Doraemon, which was able to offer a variety of body types for all of its characters, depending on what age they are, or which animal they are, and the lip syncing is so bad in this movie.
Of course, a trapdoor to a dungeon. Man, this guy is predictable.
I could understand if the lip syncing is bad in this movie if the animated segments were originally dubbed in Japanese and the filmmakers only had Japanese audio to work with. A lot of early English dubs of anime have had this problem, but the difference here is that they had English audio to work with, so there's no excuse for the lip syncing to not match with what the characters are saying as much as they are in this movie. Oftentimes, a character would say something and there would be a delay where the animation is still having the lips move, despite the fact that they finish with their sentence. And the movie's trend of having bad effects doesn't end at the live action portions of the movie. Oftentimes, it feels like they're cutting corners on the action sequences by just covering the screen in this gray smoke, using it as an excuse to not show the impacts. And the jarring effects that clashes with the rest of the movie are insanely obvious, like the speech balloons, or this abysmal swirly CGI star effect that shows up at points in the movie. Also, the CGI lava is incredibly jarring, and the animation doesn't even have the decency to make it at least look like it was meant for theaters. The movie looks like it was intended for TV instead. But okay, the production values in this movie are bad, but if the rest of the film can make up for the awful production values and the animated segments that are at such low standards for Shinny, that's all that matters. So what about the writing? Well, the writing doesn't seem to fare any better. Much like with what I pointed out with Lewis and the Aliens, the Rodfellows movie, and Gabby's Dollhouse the movie, a large chunk of the film consists of its characters goofing around and doing nothing for most of the movie. I don't even think that some of this content would even reach 22 minutes if it was mostly cut down. The first portion of the film, when we get into the comic book world, consists of Ryan and the plot-mandated comic relief character named Stella wandering aimlessly frantically in the mansion looking for Ryan's sisters, and when Ryan does find them, we get into this action sequence before Red Titan goes to his fortress, which is a volcano, to assist Big Bad, which is a stupid villain name, might I add, to enact his evil plan of making the volcano erupt by throwing Mentos into it, which is incredibly stupid because lava is nothing like pop at all. And while the film is incredibly busy wasting its time on absolutely nothing happening for most of the movie, there are things that they don't explain at all. Like, how did Clark get a hold of this magic comic book at all? The movie never acknowledged magic or fantasy elements being a factor at any point. And the entire reason for most of the plot happening is so undercooked as well. A lot like Escape from Planet Earth, this movie tries to go for a message of, ooh, this character needs to learn to appreciate other people in his family. Despite not showing him doing anything that even warrants this, Ryan's friend Aiden tells Ryan that he needs to apologize to his sister for what he said to them in a previous scene after they knowingly decided to go into Ryan's room while knowing that they're not allowed in there and messing up his things. I mean, you could argue that Ryan saying, I don't want to play with you two ever again, was going overboard. He had a justifiable reason to get mad at them because they messed up his room, not even caring about the fact that they were messing with his things in the first place. And their motivation for doing so was that Ryan was not playing with them, even though they already have each other to play with the other in the first place. But the movie is also not making Ryan very sympathetic or likable in the movie either, because at the beginning of this movie, when Ryan decided to perform this magic trick where he decides to cut his friend Dan Rhodes in half, he then goes into the house to get something that his sister took from him back. He basically leaves Dan there to suffer, leading Aiden to have to help him be put back together. And being someone who does get squeamish very easily, watching a real magic trick like this, not knowing if the person is going to accidentally do bodily harm to that person, just makes my skin crawl. But when Ryan and Aiden get to this comic book store, there's a sign that tells them that they shouldn't go in there, but they try to go in there anyway, which only proceeds to make Ryan look like an actual hypocrite when he ends up telling his sisters off for doing the exact same thing that he and Aiden were trying to do before they get caught. And the twist villain in this movie is so stupid. Apparently, Clark, the guy at the comic book store, was the villain this whole time, which makes zero sense at all because there was only one copy of this comic book that Ryan and Aiden found when they went into that room that they weren't allowed to go into, and his motivation for doing what he's been doing throughout this film was that his little sister started caring more about her iPad than him, and he blames Ryan as the reason as to why his sister stopped paying attention to him. But that's not Ryan's fault at all. The sister chose to watch Ryan's content. You should be blaming your parents as being the reason why your sister stopped paying attention to you, not Ryan himself. So overall, Ryan's World the movie is just awful. The film is terribly written, where the characters either have no motivation for what they do in the film or the film decides to not tell a story at all. The production values are incredibly cheap, making the film not feel like it was meant for a theatrical release, and the characters give me no reason to sympathize with them at all. And given the other stuff that happened behind the scenes, plus with Ryan's World having stagnated with its target demographic in favor of other channels like Cocomelon, which is already bad enough, it's no wonder why this film failed to make back its $10 million budget. It's just bad. Definitely bottom tier on the films I've seen so far. The only reason as to why this movie is not in the bottom 4, and not even at the bottom of the list, because my top 3 consists of films that are actually insulting, and the Rodfellows movie consists of disgusting content akin to those Spider-Man and Elsa videos, but still though. The best way to sum up this movie in general is that this movie is basically the closest that we've ever gotten to one of those YouTube content farm videos. Something that is soulless, cheap, meant to make a quick buck, etc. And again, this thing was able to be released in theaters. When looking hard at it, this is the kind of stuff that you'd see on a television movie. And even some of those films are better than this pile of garbage. Therefore, I am giving this movie a 2 out of 10, and it is placing at the bottom 5 for all of Sean's yearly reviews. Avoid this movie at all costs. A lot of people did that when this thing came out, and it bombed for a very good reason. And let's let it stay that way.
Everything I